Alright, welcome back to part 6 of this series, and in this video we are going to work on our bump maps and probably our specular maps. We'll see how much time we have, try to hit about an hour, hoping that it doesn't take that long. So the first thing I always like to do is just kind of see what I've got to work with at first, and I want to get some bump in the fur. But it's tricky because it can overblow itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click this layer and duplicate selected, and that'll make a copy of the fur. And then if you right click it again, if you're in Mudmox 2014, you can say move selected to, and I'm gonna have to just keep saying this because it moves it over to the right, but I'm gonna move selected to the bump map, and I think that's might be getting cut off. I know this is, but just move it to the bump map and you're going to see it's going to go pretty crazy there. Let me move this back. And you can see that that's pretty strong, and by doing that I just about completely lose my normal maps, but really all I want to do is just pull that back at 0. It's not there at all. So let's go about 10%. Now we can still see some of our normal maps. Still got my, my worry lines and a bit of my cheek lines and things like that. Keeping in mind that the normal maps don't display very well here. If I hide that all together, you can see that the seams are showing up, but the fur now has some bump to it. The extra fur that I did, the fur overlay, I need to actually also duplicate that. So let's duplicate selected there, and then right click and say move selected to, and I am picking the bump map channel. And you can see that that's kind of coming across, real deep, so we'll set that to 10% too. So that gives us that, and that should work across the entire mesh. This is not a very good texture to use as a bump map, obviously. We could go in and paint a little bit more, like if I let's just merge these two together because I really don't need them separated. So I can just say merge visible. It's somewhere on here. Where is it? I skipped it. There it is. And bump maps paints just black and white. That's all you really need to worry about. So just pull up a white, and using my fall off there, you can see that I can it's ugly. What is my strength? I could, if I wanted to, get some pretty deep gashes. In this case, I'm not actually going to do this. I'm going to drop my strength down pretty heavy. And maybe I'll go with it a little bit. I definitely don't want to do this over the whole model. It's going to take forever. Could, but I don't want to. If you're worried about it, you can do it yourself. So just get a bit of fur going on there. Any place else that it just doesn't look right. I think everywhere else it's okay. Again, this isn't a correct kind of normal map or bump map for it because the dark fur is counting as a dip. It's pushing that in, and that is definitely not something that we really want. See where it's gotten real dark there. So I'm going to fan this out just in these dark spots. Keeping it pretty large. And doing that just so it's a little bit more noticeable. It's only in the highlights, so it's not something that's going to be overly super exaggerated. Let's work on the eyes just a little bit. Keep being care not to hit the eyeball itself. Want that to be smooth. Do a little on the brow. And that's, I think, about all I really need to do. Yeah, let's do a little bit on the ends of the ears. He's got really big ears. Exaggerated in a sense. Going with that kind of bit of a Disney theory there. Exaggerate the distinguishing features. One of the most distinguishing things about these guys is they got big old ratty ears and big old noses and whatnot. Alright, let's make a new layer here. And we'll call this lip bump. And again, I want to hide this top geometry. Let's go up a level so we can get a little bit of a finer selection. I just want to hide this stuff. Hide that. Hide his tooth. What happened? There we go. That's, I think I got a little bit too much there. Darn it. Gotta do that again. I pulled off some of his actual lip. Should have double checked that. I'll just go around his snout. Whoa, what happened? I'm not real sure what happened there. It just lost everything I had selected, and undoing didn't bring it back, so I'll do it again. Yay. 15th time's a charm. Look at his nose. Hide that. Alright, I should be able to work with that. Alright, paintbrush. I'm going to actually go with the stamp, but I am going to paint black. Could have just held control, but I'm lazy. And let's just do some segmenting. Smaller brush. It's pretty deep. I'm pressing pretty hard. Not too hard, but I am pressing kind of hard. And then let's blur that some. Interesting note about the Mudbox blur tool. If I try to go over the same spot, so it does one continuous stroke, and then I try to do it again, it's not going to do anymore. But if I even move the view even a hair, and then I do it again, it does it again. So if you need to blur further, it's actually kind of handy. I think they did this on purpose, and I'm glad they did, because if you wanted to get like an even blur on something, sometimes it's kind of hard to do that all in one shot. And so they make it so that I could paint this part and say, oh, I missed a part. If it didn't do this and I tried to get that other part again, it would double blur the parts that I did hit, and that would suck. So I'm glad that it's like that. Okay, I think the lip bump can stand as is. Let's do the ears. Now for the ears, I'll just keep it on the same layer because I'm not real worried about it. What I'm going to use is this texture here, which is called the brick tile. And let's just see. I'm going to randomize that, and let's just see if this works. It might not. Probably not. Yeah, it just gives it a little bit of noise in there. That's really all I wanted, just to kind of be slightly bumpy. And then I'm going to go back to my fur and kind of re-blend that back in. To make sure that the fur kind of crosses over. Okay, that looks pretty alright. I'm not going to say wonderful. Alright, let's do his boots. It's going to be the hardest part, I think. Boot underscore bump. What's that all about? Alright, now what I'm going to do for this, to make it easier, is I'm going to hide the color on the boots. I'm also going to hide the normal map. And I'm going to get rid of a stamp. I'm going to put my spacing to Zilcho. And I'm going to turn on steady stroke. And I'm going to paint with white. Actually, I do need the normal map on because I want to see where I put some of these details. And what I'm going to do is come here. And I want this even. So my strength is going to be 100% in the pressure, and actually my size. I don't want any sensitivity here, and I'm going to go with 100%. This is going to be toned back in the settings here, and what I'm going to do is make my edge here probably too big of a brush. I'm actually going to call it too big. Just make it a little bit smaller like that. About 0.2. Follow that same line that I created in the sculpt. Okay. Let's blur that actually. Let me just make sure I can see the whole thing. Just boost my brush up. That'll soften it. Again, I can't go over it again unless I just slightly move my view, and then it'll do it again. Softens that edge some. Okay. I'm gonna keep it at that strength for now. Actually, I'm gonna tone that down some. Okay. And what I'm gonna do is make a new layer. I'm gonna call this laces. And I think, okay, yeah. Let's get my brush and let's go a little bit smaller. And what I'm going to do is start on one side. This is going to be a little difficult to hit, and I'm just going to make a cross like that. Okay, let's see if we can't use a better fall off. Still a little peaky. Let's try this one. I still feel that is a little peaky. I don't think this one's going to work at all. No, that's not working. Let's try this one. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one direction of these. All the laces that are going this way. These are the laces that are going to be underneath. There's not going to be an awful lot of them. And let's see what we get when we blur that. 2 blurs. Okay, and then we'll make a new layer. We'll call that laces 2. And now I'm going to come from the other side, about the same height, and I'm going to hit the same point that the other one did. Now it's going to look like it joined. Let's go ahead and hit that end, even though I feel one's a little steep. And then I'll do it like this. That's not right at all. I didn't really plan this too well, but there we go. So there's going to be 2 close little rivets. And then what I can do is blur this again. 2 blurs, I believe. Or maybe I did 3. One of these created a little bit of problem over here. The blur tool has issues when it blurs all the way to the end. Like when you blur down a down a face where the fall off angle is too steep. Just blur that one. Okay, and then if I take laces 2 and I drop the strength, now I got a nice crossover there. Let's clean it up a little bit still. These aren't going to be perfect or anything. I don't have really the resolution I need for it. With higher resolution geometry, you can, UVs and textures and all that, you can get some pretty good laces just using this method. Alright, let's make a new layer underneath those laces, and we'll call those ringlets. And for this, I'm going to use no spacing. I hit 1, no spacing. I think I was on the erase tool. I'll use this fall off. And the first thing I'm going to do is with white, I believe. I'm on white. Yes. I'm going to make, I don't want a steady stroke there. Let's make that a little bit smaller. Just going to tap those spots there. Kind of tapping them twice. And then I'm going to shrink my brush and hold Control and tap in the middle of them, those rings, just once. And let's tone that down. And actually, where the bottom lace is going through, let's erase it. I missed one. also kind of, they are kind of crossing over that bit of a seam there, but that's okay. And that's kind of all I really needed to do. Now what I can do now is say duplicate the laces, and let's just click that and say move selected to, and I'm picking diffuse. I know it's off the screen, but I picked the diffuse and you'll see it pops up under here. Let's put it over the boot. And let's get the other one. Laces 2, duplicate. And I'll just drag that one up. I don't need to move it over. Laces 2, copy. And let's hold Alt and click to isolate that layer. And then we'll show that layer. Let's pull them both to 100%. And then merge visible. And then we'll pop diffuse back on. And let's adjust the color. So let's turn the value down, turn the saturation up, and let's find a green. It's going to be about here, I'd say. They're a little bit yellowish, and then we'll pop our saturation down and our value down like that. So we got ourselves some green laces. Okie doke. Show our bump. Let's show our normal. Let's go down to the base level geometry. Doesn't look too bad, you know, from a distance. He's got laces. That's all I really need. All right, let's see what we can't do with the soles of his boots. So I may have these guys laying around on the ground, sleeping, which is another word for dead. And let's try this. Use tiles. Let's try a hexagon pattern for the bottom of his boots. Not sure that's a good option. I definitely don't want to use snowflakes or stars or rivets. Yeah, we'll go with the hexagon. What is this? Oh, that's sci-fi paneling. Okay, it won't do us any good. Alright, and we'll go about that size. And actually, let's hide that. Let's do that here. I believe this is going to be much easier to pull off here. Alright, make a new layer here. Sole bump. Use projection brush. Hit Q. And let's pop this. Let's get rid of that stamp image. I might not have the resolution for this fine. Let's make the brush bigger and just get full coverage and then hit Q. And I think it's showing up okay. Let's see what happens when we blur it. The blur tool does not work well in this mode. Just keep that in mind. It's working okay here, but it tends to not like doing that at all. So what I'm going to do is click this and adjust color, and from the presets here I'm going to hit inverse. I'm going to hit OK, and then Alt T A, and let's take a look. It's just some detail, that's all I really wanted. But there is one thing that I do want to do. And we'll go back to this flat version because I think it's just going to be easier. And I'm going to hide the diffuse layer altogether. And I want to show my wire just to see. what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mask here just by hitting that little mask button, and I'm going to use my paintbrush and black, and I want spacing of 0 because I want this smooth, but I want my steady stroke on, and I want my fall off to be not 100% sharp. Let's see what we get. Okay, let's make it a little bit bigger. And what I'm going to do is just kind of trace the outline. This might be too thick. I'm thinking it is too thick. I don't want to be left with nothing. Yep, it's too thick, so let's pull that down. And I just want to trace this outline. Now I am kind of curving instead of perfectly following the geometry because it's supposed to be curved. It's not supposed to be, and I can actually let up. Start over here so I can readjust my hand. Or is it going to go off the screen here? It can sometimes help when you're doing this kind of thing to hold your breath. I'm not doing that right now, but it can help. Alright. And then the other thing I want to do is get rid of this steady stroke. And I want to make a circle here. Okay, that's not going to work here. It's broken. Borked. I should be able to do that here. Nope, I need to go up res. Oh, I went up brush. Page up. Okay, just keep going there. Get it to the highest level. And I want to make a... I actually want that to be sharp. And like that. And then projection, stencil. Don't need tiles, but I do want to sign this. That is my signature. Pause. It's a paw. In case you didn't recognize that as a paw. Interesting. I kind of like how that came out. Very interesting. Let's see what happens if we blur the edge of that. Don't want to blur the whole edge because you can see it breaks up here. Just want to blur the edge of the little thing here. And again, this is where the fact that it doesn't let you double blur without moving your scene first comes in handy, because now I can lift off, come back and lift off. Very cool. Alright, and the other thing I want to do is cancel. Let's get the steady stroke back on so it's clean. I don't want this showing up in the whatever you calls it, whatever you call that dip. I don't even know what that's called, where the segment of the toe and the heel can flex. Now the cool thing about using a mask is that I can actually go back and forth to clean this up. And it's a very, very handy thing about using masks instead of, oops, I really should put this back down to sensitivity. using mask instead of erasers, because if I had erased that, I'd have been locked into it. Same thing when you're working in Photoshop. If you need to get rid of something, mask it. Don't erase it. You never know when you need to come back. Okay. Boot bump. Let's see what we can do here. Just testing my brush. Try to pick a better fall off. Give myself a little bit of a trim line there. That'll help clean up the distortion that happens. On normal maps in a lot of cases. I kind of missed here, but I can just thicken it a little bit. Not that big of a whoop. Alright. So a couple trim lines going on there. Now let's see if we can't get a set of stitches. And I think what I have, I don't believe it's loaded. Pretty sure it's not. But I think I have created some stitches. Let's go by details and by name, not by date. Maybe I don't have stitches. So I'm going to need to create it. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Alright, let's create a stitches stamp. Should be fun. And we do that here in Photoshops. Let's fill with black. Make a new layer. And I'm going to switch over to my mouse. It's going to be a little bit easier for me to control here than my pen tablet. And what I'm going to do is create an oval. And I'm going to fill that with white. And then I'm going to rotate that at like an angle. I could do straight stitches. So they'd be like this. Come on, I want my move tool. It could be like that. And then as the spacing goes, that'll help. Or I could do two styles. Let's just make a dupe of the layer. Hold Alt and drag the layer. We'll hide this one. Hold Control to select the pixels there, and just move that over. Okay, Control D, and then let's try, because it could blur it to make it so it's softer. but that's not really how it should be. What we should do is double click this and pull up our layer styles, and let's give it a color overlay of, okay, oops, that's off the screen. Let's give a saturation of 0 and a black of 50%. Okay, so that'll be neutral. 50% on a bump map is just not going to show anything. And then we'll give it an inner glow from the center, white. And let's give it a bigger size, like I'd say like 62 or so, 60. If I choke it, it'll come in a little bit more, so we can give it a 5% Wayne Brady choke, and then that should be good. Now what we need to do to save this out is just hide the background. Control Shift S for save as. Hopefully stencils is on this list. Yes, it is. And we're going to call this Stitch 1, and you want to save as a PNG format. Let's pull that in. Okay, Stitch 1 PNG, save. Okay, that one's done. Now what I'm going to do is just delete, actually, here, let's go back to this one. And this is the other style of stitch. Just going to move this over, hit Control T. I held Alt when I moved it over with it selected, so it did not make a new layer. Just let me note that real quick. If I don't have a selection and I use the move tool and I hold Alt and I move it, it gives me a new layer. And if I need to dupe this all over the place, you can see I'm going to end up with a giant list of layers, and I don't want that. So just with a selection and a dupe, it will not make a new layer. Control T, right click, flip horizontal. Okay. So we'll go with that, and then all I need to do is hold Alt and drag the effect over. That makes a copy of it. Okay, Control Shift S, call this Stitch. I always miss that T. Stitch 2 as a PNG. You can see all my stencils are PNG files. Maintains the transparency. Okie doke. Let's go back to my box and see what we get. May have to adjust it. Go by date here. Let's try Stitch 1 first. Oops, I don't want to actually add it as a stencil, so I'm going to highlight that and delete it. I want to add it as a stamp. That's that's probably why. That's probably why it wasn't in a list. That's embarrassing. Actually, no, I didn't have one already built. Well, I got this one here, which is a horizontal stitch like that, but I'm going to go with the one we just made. So let's go Stitch 1. And we're going to paint with that. We want a steady stroke, but we want a very high stamp spacing, and let's just give it a test. We also want to make sure that we're following our stroke. Let's give it a test. Let's make a new layer and call that boot. I always do that. Boot stitch. And let's see if we're not painting at all. Let's move that layer to the top. Let's make sure it's not under anything. I'm going to paint with white. We want this to maintain an evenness. Let's see, are we getting anything yet? Oh, I have a stencil showing. Derp. There we go. Okay. Let's try making it smaller. We don't have a lot of resolution for this. Let's just see if it's going to work. So what we want to do is we want to trace on the backs of these. Try to maintain that spacing there. Nope, I gotta probably hit on the same one. Gonna have a little bit of a gap there, but that's okay. You show me a perfect pair of shoes, and I'll go back and fix this. No, I won't. Just kidding. But yeah, shoes tend not to be perfect either, like real shoes. Alright, let's see if we can't get this one back in there. There we go. There we go. And we're going to go by the front of this guy. Put right in the middle of that to continue. We want to try to paint on faces that are facing the camera as much as possible, and try to avoid doing the ones that possibly aren't facing the camera, because the I'm going to leave that one there, and let's join here like that. Do the same thing here. And follow that curve. And then let's run a set down the back. I didn't end up using the other stitch. I kind of like this one. And you can see, oh, it's got awful ugly, real pixely. But that can actually be helped by simply turning them down. Blurring this actually does help a little bit. Clean them up. Let's turn them up a little bit. It helps a tad, but definitely when we blur, we want to only blur the ones that are very, very camera facing, because it can tend to shift on you. I'll illustrate that here in a second. So blurring them is helping a little bit. And I'm not hitting the same stitch twice, or at least trying not to. See, if I try to blur this part here, see how it got all crazy? So we don't want to do that. There might actually be a way to fix that. If you did fall off based on angle, would that help? Yeah, kinda. Yeah, actually that does help some, but I think we're good. And what's cool now is I can take this and dupe it, selected, and right click and move selected to. I'm going to move it to the diffuse, which if I show my diffuse layer, I take this and move it all the way to the top. Just put it over the boot. It should show up white. What I can try to do is adjust the color. There isn't a lot of color information in there now. Let's see if I can brighten it up. Let's boost the saturation. And let's go for, let's find orange on this. Let's say it's roughly there. So it's kind of a little bit of a bit of a tan stitch, and I feel it's a little colory. So let's adjust the color again and just pop the saturation down some. I'm going to leave the ringlets white and not black. Sorry. Let's go ahead and say the opposite of that. Black and not white. Alright, socks. Let's see what we can do with the socks. Let's actually pick, you hit 3 and pick the color of the socks. And then lighten it. And let's try stitch 2. Let's see if we can't make like a cool pattern. Okay, our spacing needs to come down quite dramatically. Let's go flat lighting. Actually, no, we can't go flat lighting because I need to see the normal map. And I'm going to try, this is a little hard to visualize, but I'm going to try to do every other stripe here. Normal map got a little warped. That may actually turn out to be fixable if I think the reason is because when you sculpt, when you subdivide, you actually end up with a an edited mesh. Basically, your original mesh is changed, like how I've got this sleeve here that overhangs on my original mesh. Once you subdivide that, if you do smooth the positions, that actually gets lost, and basically the whole model gets relaxed. And if you, instead of baking the normals onto, let me save here while I explain this. Instead of baking the normals onto the base mesh of the sculpt mesh, if you re-import your original mesh, sometimes that can serve to fix the warping in the normal maps. So look, if I come down here, and that kind of warping I'm talking about is like right here. Like you can see that I get this crazy weirdness going on there. Same thing a little bit bottom here, where it hits those polygonal edges, those segments. You can see that they kind of swoop up, almost spiderweb shaped. But from certain angles you won't notice it, other angles you will. Like that angle you don't notice it, that angle you do. You know, in some cases you just have to kind of live with it. In other cases it is fixable. The thing is that the real way to fix it would be to not use subdivision. Instead of subdivision, you'd use ray trace, which would trace from one poly, you know, to the next one, and do like a one-for-one like that. But the problem is when you do that method in areas of very tight geometry, like right here, and actually you can see here that it's crossing over. It's just a modeling error on my part. I'm going to need to fix that on the model. Not a big deal. Be easily fixed. I don't even know how that happened. But in those tight areas, other areas could be like, you know, in here where his rat junkus is. It'll create like just a mess. It'll freak. It doesn't know which side to test, and it doesn't do a good job. Like inside the mouth here will get broken too. And the reason for all that is because, like I said, the polys are too close and it doesn't know which side to test. There'll be issues. Subdivision just goes, okay, well this one polygon was these 16 polygons, so I'm just going to transfer that data. But ray tracing just traces straight line out from the normals. And so there's uses for both of them, and what you could do is actually use both of them and then mask the parts that look good on one and mask out the parts that look good on the other, kind of thing, you know. Just blend them together and pick and choose which are the best, and you can load them both here into Mudbox and just mask it back and forth and see which one you like. For instance, this collar here didn't really come out too great, so what I'm going to do is fix that by creating, let's go white, creating a bump map over it. This might not work out, not sure. Let's hide his whole noggin here. Let's hide that. And let's actually go ahead and hide his neck. Hit 1. Let's get my steady stroke. I don't want to use this stamp here. Let's see what we get. Okay, I do need to go high res. What's going on there? Oh, I need to drop my spacing down. Does not like painting right there at all, but I think I know how to fix that. Yeah, it's not liking painting over that seam, so what I'm going to do is get rid of the steady stroke. And I'm just going to fill this in entirely. Now using a smaller brush I can trick it and see I can fix that. Same thing here. It doesn't like doing it with a real large brush because half the brush goes over the mirror seam, and once it does that you can see that it doesn't really know what to do and it kind of freaks. But if you just shrink your brush, sometimes you can fix it. Not always, but definitely sometimes, and in this case it's working. So I just filled that with white, and I'm using the eraser now, and I'm just going to kind of pull that back. I think I need some spacing, because that's less than 0. The math doesn't know what to do. Alright, fill this back in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the normal map, and I'm going to add a mask, and I'm going to paint with black, and just kind of fade out that garbage that's not working out so well. Again, smaller brush to get the crossover here. Let's blur that a little bit. Alright, so immediately I'm much happier with what I'm seeing here. So let's see what happens if I tone this down. Actually, instead of toning it down, let's tone it down by color. That way it's 100%, and we'll go, I don't want to go 50 because that's just going to wipe it out. So let's go about 25 or so. And now what I can do is give myself kind of a secondary lip. And then to fix this, I'm going to need to shrink my brush. Give it a good scrubbing out. Wow, my pen tablet is getting to the end of its ropes. And then let's do the same thing on the very edge here. Let's get back on steady stroke. Hey, I hit ya. Alright, and we go right along that line. It doesn't want to paint right there, so I'm just going to go over it and then erase it. Oh, I can't erase it. Hang on. I gotta use this color. Luckily, it does sample the color on that layer. Okay. Oop. What happened? Alright. Okay. Now let's try something. I'm just going to call this color too because I don't really know what to call this. Let's try these lines, and let's get a big brush, and what I'm going to do is use black. Good God. I'm going to rotate it so it's going. Wow, it's not going to like any of this, I don't think. Number one, I need to make sure that that's. Alright, this really isn't working. How about this one? That's going to be a little bit better. Alright, let's blur this. Let's go ahead and actually crank this up to 3. I'm going to give this a real heavy blur. And now, I'm not going to worry about masking this out. I'm just going to erase it where I don't want it. And that just gives you that little bit of like irregular cloth kind of. Yeah, I went a little far there. That would have been where masking would have helped me out. I could have painted that back with white. I'll try to wipe off my pen tablet a little bit. It's kind of gross, but they can get like caked with hand sweat, you know. Alright, and now let's do this. A real light fall off, real light pressure, a little bit more spacing, very small brush, a little bit less than black as the color, and let's just and then go opposite. Just want those lines. I really don't have the resolution to try to pull something like this off, but it's worth trying to do something with it. Again, to blur further, I have to move my view. And we'll just let that trail out to the back. So it's got a little bit of something going on there. I don't know if I'm going to end up keeping that, but I can also tone that way back. Like that. That helps. So there's a little bit of something there. Like I said, this is the part where it's like, well, do I do that? Do I worry about that? Do I even care? Do I need it? You know, yay, nay, yes or no. Alright, I'm going to do another thing here. I'm actually about done with these details. We're at an hour. So I'm going to stop very soon, but I do want to do one thing, and that would be adjust the color on my shirt. And let's pop saturation all the way up. Let's find green. Slight bit of yellow, and let's pop saturation down. And maybe brighten it up some. A little bit more green, a little bit less saturation. Okay, let's do the same with the shorts. This already has a decent amount of saturation, so I believe I just need to adjust the hue. There we go. A little bit more army-ish. Okay, let's hit U to unhide everything. Let's take a look at him. So far, so good, I think. On the next video, I did spend all this time on the bump. On the next video, I believe I'll work on the specular some, which isn't going to take an awful lot of time, so probably, hopefully, can combine that with the exports and the texture prep and the importing into UDK to really see what's going on. But so far, I kind of liking him. From a distance, he's looking pretty good. Let's just hide the normal map. So colors I think are okay. I'm gonna put some slightly funny stuff in the specular and give him some armpit sweat spots and put some sweat down his back and maybe even on his butt just to be funny. And then you know, go like that. I'm not gonna really make him too dirty, but I will dirty up his boots and probably leave his tail okay. Could maybe give him a gash or a scar, but the problem with that is being that this is mirrored. If I like say, you know, give him a big old scar across one eye, he's gonna have this crazy mirrored scar on the other eye. That ain't gonna work. So I'm probably not gonna do anything really like that. I may put fur here to blend the shirt to the neck. That might be wise. And if I don't do that, I might just get rid of the inner rim there, just to help make that not look like it's totally disconnected. That would be a fix I should and probably will do. There's some kind of a bump going on there. Is that the collar? I hate how it does this. Probably the fur. Yeah, it's the fur. So what I can do to fix that real quick is just take the shirt and dupe it. And then move it to the bump mount. And just put that on top of the fur. That gets rid of that. It's just a solid tone, so it's not going to really affect too much. However, you will think that it is because it's doing this here, like on the edge, but really it's not there. If I hide that, that won't be there, but then the fur part will. When you go to generate your bump maps, it'll be okay. That's actually not there. That's just kind of a visual glitch. But the one thing I do want to do to that is adjust color. That's off the screen. But if I adjust the color here, and I just want to knock the saturation out, so it's not green, it just saves me some time later. Like I said, you can see like what's looking like seams and stuff, but they're really not there. It's just visual. If they do show up, I'll have to do some blending in Photoshop, and then let's show the other collars here. You always want to highlight the layer before you unhide anything so it doesn't reorder your list. It would be nice if there was just a thing, you know, checkbox, reorder list or not. You know, do you want me to screw with you or no? And I'm pretty sure the answer is going to be no. So, alright, there we go. That is the bump map layer. Got the boots, I think. Looks pretty good. Looks okay. They're not great, obviously. But we don't have a lot of resolution, and it's going to read okay from a distance. Once I get dirt and stuff on that part of him, I think it'll be okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this part, and then we'll be back for the specular, and hopefully that won't take too long. I can't imagine it will. And we'll put him into UDK.